Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, pioneers of the brave new world. Welcome to Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson, your survival guide for negotiating the socio-technological evolution of the next 20 years. And here to tease out your options is a bloke who knows a lot and does things. It's Matthew Dickerson. Sorry, Matt, I started off on a little bit of a doomsday preppy sort of a feel there. Folks, a quick disclaimer, we are not trying to start a cult here. Or are we?
Well, maybe. There's some advantages there, aren't there? No, I shouldn't even joke about it, should I? Now, this week I had a really interesting meeting. We were talking about the heat island effect in an urban area. So a fascinating discussion about that. Now, the obvious thing that people say is, well, you've got to have everyone with a white roof because a black roof absorbs all the heat.
Oh, we do an experiment in year 7 with that.
So there's logic there. Black absorbs, white tends to reflect. But then you say, well, if you're reflecting the heat, i.e. white, then aren't you creating more heat in the environment, in the atmosphere? So don't you want a black roof so you're absorbing that heat and getting the heat out of the atmosphere? Because some people just go, it's bleedingly obvious you need white. But then when you start to think about that, you think, hold on, it's bleedingly obvious that you need black. So there's a few things here that, in terms of this discussion we had, and a new product that I'm going to mention in a moment. But one of the big things...
Can I just jump in there?
Yeah, sure.
That reflecting of heat back in the atmosphere, that's the albedo effect. So if anyone's taking notes for the exam, just so you know, thank you very much.
Now, that's a good idea, actually, an exam at the end of the year, a Tech Talk exam. I'm not sure I've got the time to set the questions, but it sounds fascinating.
No market.
So, yeah, that's right. So one of the things, there's a couple of things here. The reflected heat that comes off the roof, for example, is a short wave radiation, and that's less effective at warming the atmosphere compared to the long wave radiation. So there is still some logic in saying let's put white there to reflect. The other part of the logic is that in a warmer environment like we've got in Australia, like we've got in most parts of Australia, then you're doing more cooling of your house during summer than you are doing heating during winter. So you still want to reflect that heat, because in summer, if you're absorbing that heat, you're absorbing the heat in the house. So then you tend to spend more money, more energy, more CO2 on actually cooling your house down.
Yeah.
So that still makes sense. If you're in a really cold environment, maybe you would want a black roof to absorb more of that heat. But again, that's so the logic, the first logic that people have is, you want white to reflect that heat, even though you might have some other counter arguments. That is the right logic. But there's a company, Colorbond, which is a well-known company in Australia. They've actually come up with a specific material that's got this high solar reflectance index. So they call it Coolmax. So it's not just, I'll put on a roof on my house that's white or a light colour because that's going to be better. They've created a specific product, this Coolmax product. And that's whole job is not just reflect a certain percentage back like white would, but reflect more back. So it's got a very high solar reflectance index, an SRI. We don't talk much about SRIs now. If someone's building a house, they don't say, and make sure, Mr. Builder, you put a high SRI roof on my house. It's just, I like the colour white or grey or whatever.
I'm sure that's it. Yeah.
So that's quite interesting in terms of all of that. But again, it's probably more about this heat island effect, which is more about heat in an urban environment. If you've got a house on a farm, probably not much of a big deal that you're creating there. But when you've got hundreds of houses in an area close together, that's when you get a heat island effect around an urban environment. And it doesn't have to be a major city like a Sydney or a Melbourne. It can be in regional cities as well, because you get a heat island around those regional cities. So all quite fascinating. The ultimate solution, and we have talked about products like this, the ultimate solution is to have a roof that will absorb heat in the colder months but reflect heat in the hotter months.
There's the challenge.
That's the challenge, that's right. And there are products that are in development along those lines, but in the meantime, that Coolmax sounds like a pretty interesting product.
We get smarter and smarter about what we do, don't we?
We do.
Okay, people, we've got some cool stories today. Having a personal stylist used to be the luxury of A-list celebrities, but now we can have all the help in the wardrobe that we need each day as another career option bites the dust thanks to AI. We'll also see how Aussie manufacturing is kicking up again in a tasty way in Brisbane, and having 6 fingers used to make you the butt of a joke. Well, we'll see who's laughing now with an extra thumb, and it just might make you the king of the playground there. But enough stalling for time. Let's get this show on the road. Have you ever solved a Rubik's Cube? I mean, without doing the sticker thing. Or are you so good at it that you can now like do it in like a couple of minutes or even seconds? Some people are quick though, lightning fast. And it may not surprise you that the world record for solving the Rubik's Cube is an impressive 3.13 seconds. And well done to Max Park, you're a master of your art. Or at least it was 3.13 seconds until stupid robots came along and wrecked it for everyone. Matt, why don't you tell us about how robots are taking over the world now?
This sound effect here, that's me not solving the cube in 3.13 seconds.
I had the clock on you too.
Good. The current world record now just been broken, 0.305 seconds.
That's ridiculous.
So 10 times faster than Max Park.
Let's see if Max Park can beat that one.
Step up to the game, Max. What are you doing? 3.13. Have a
Robots
crack.
have wrecked it for us.
It's actually quite fascinating. Now, the Rubik's Cube, I do love the Rubik's Cube. So Erno Rubik invented it back in 1974, but we didn't really see it until the 80s. 1980, the Ideal Toy Corp released that. Now, it really is a difficult mathematical challenge. 4.3 by 10 to the 19 different combinations possible. If you had a Rubik's Cube when the Big Bang occurred, and you said, I'm going to use a different random combination of this cube every second. Where we are in our history now, 13.8 billion years or so later, we'd be about 10% through the possible combinations of the cube. So if you think, what's 4.3 by 10 to the 19 or what's 43 quintillion, then that gives you an idea of just how big a number it is. So when people sit there and go, oh, well, if a monkey hits enough keys on a keyboard, they'll produce a Shakespeare manuscript. Then if I just keep moving around places on the Rubik's Cube, I'll get there. Sure thing. Go another 10 universe lengths and you might be there. So it's quite a challenge from a mathematical perspective. And I used to love Rubik's Cubes when I was at school, 1980. That's back when I was still at school. I used to go to Rubik's Cube competitions. My proudest prize was a Coke-shaped radio. You tuned it with the bottom, you changed the volume with the top, and it looked just like a Coke bottle, but it was a radio.
Have you still got it? Do you still listen to AM radio with it?
I would love to say I've still got it. It'd probably be worth something now, but I was hard fought for that. We used to have buses that would come around to different towns, and they were Rubik Cube competition buses. You'd walk in, they'd have cubes on the table, and you'd have your hands on the table.
Take children away, and you'd never see them again.
You probably couldn't do it these days. There was
Willy
probably
Wonka's
some
chocolate
guy standing at the front, and you'd walk in. And what was I then? I probably would have been around 12 or 13. So I'm sure it probably wasn't a great thing from that perspective.
But
anyway,
you'd say you walk in, you'd have to have your hands on the table, flat on the table. They'd start a clock.
A little
Someone
buzzer
with
would
a
go.
stopwatch.
They had an old-fashioned stopwatch, that's right. But a little buzzer would go, and off you go, and then you'd put your hands up, and you'd win prizes, and you'd go on a regional competition. So all good fun. But I was never at the Max Park sort of level. I don't know, 30 or 40 seconds was probably my best time. But so I do love them, and I love the simplicity and the complication of it. It's simple. It's just a little 3x3 cube. Look at that. But the complication of it was unbelievable. Then you had those Rubik's Magics that came out. Yeah. So they were a little bit flawed because that nylon that held it all together would break when you try and go too fast. The cube seemed pretty hardy. Yeah,
I became an expert at that Rubik's Magic. But then they made, what, a 5x5 Rubik's Cube? Or was there a 4x4
There was a 4x4, 5x5. Yeah. There's a little 2x2, which is quite cute. So
you can't solve that. Get out.
So yeah, that's right. That's the break in with that one. Even the 3x3, there have been tests done in terms of create algorithms that demonstrate that a computer can take it from any state and a maximum of 20 moves to solve it. So
that just makes everyone feel terrible.
It does, doesn't it?
All those Christmas holidays wasted.
20 moves.
I was just sitting there just trying to work it out. Now, I've done it twice, but I can never remember how I did it.
Yeah, and what are you doing? I bet you didn't do it 20 moves. What are you doing wasting all that time?
No, I spent a lot of time on it.
So here with a computer, the first thing that you've got in terms of robotics is the robot can look at it, analyse it, and decide, probably within 20 moves, no more than, I know the moves to solve it. So that's the first part of the challenge. Now, computers have been solving, or robots have been solving cubes for a long time. In 2009, it was a bit of a breakthrough. A robot solved a Rubik's Cube. You could sit down, any combination, and it would work it out, and it only took 1 minute and 4 seconds.
Right.
And back in 2009, we thought that was pretty cool.
It was faster than me.
It was faster than most people. A robot solving a cube, fantastic. But obviously as time's gone on, they've said, well, we know the maximum number, and I hate the fact they call it God's number, but God's number is 20 for the Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
We know the maximum number. So how do we now get to the stage where we just make it faster to solve? So do the analysis, that's fine, but then having the servo motors, the configuration to actually solve it. And now, again, it's down to 0.305 seconds. Interestingly enough, the previous record was 0.38. So they've improved, but it was still pretty fast before.
If they break this record, I reckon it's just going to explode the cube. The cube's going to just, it's going to be spinning so fast that it's going to fly off everywhere.
Well, they did find that the servo motors on it had to be incredibly accurate because, and I find that when I'm solving it myself, if I get it 93 degrees, the next part I can't quite move. That's at my hand speed. You can imagine at a robot speed doing it and getting it
Someone's
90.
Get hurt.
That's right, 90.5 degrees, and then there's a cube that goes pointing off somewhere. So it's quite interesting. So they need accurate movement so they don't jam the cube. It also has to recognise the colours, recognise and match the colours when it's actually solving it. And you can imagine it uses a bit of AI in there to work out the fewest number of moves to actually get there. What's the use of this? Why do we care? I mean, we can solve the Rubik's Cube.
All we want to do is hurt Max Park's feelings, didn't we?
Probably, that was part of it.
Make him feel terrible about himself.
But I think part of the whole thing with robotics is we know we've got robots that are really good at doing one single thing over and over and over. But getting robots to look, to analyse, think about it, and then do something about it, what we're ultimately after is someone that can pick up the clothes off my floor and do the washing for me. And if we've got robots who can solve a cube in 0.305 seconds, then maybe we can get some robot that can actually make me breakfast, pick up my clothes and make that coffee in the perfect way. And I don't mind if it takes more than 0.305 seconds to do all of that. I can live with that.
Tech Talk.
Machine olfaction has been something of a major challenge for robotics engineers. Smell is such a complex thing, and smells are really hard to describe in words if you've ever tried. That job requires some eloquent poetry. Discerning one smell from another is hard for robots to do. But in the spirit of anything you can do, AI can do better, comes the news that AI is developing a sense of smell, folks. Of course, Matt. Of course AI can smell now.
Well, why not? If it's going to take over the world, it probably
If it's
needs
going to
to
solve
smell.
Rubik's Cubes in 0.3 of a second, then it might as well be smelling stuff.
Why
too.
not? And it goes back some time. Alexander Graham Bell, better known for telephones and for smell, he actually called for the development of a new science focused on odour. So that's going back a few years. That he thought that'd be a good idea. But
Smell-o-vision.
Smell-o-vision, that's
Sorry.
right, yes.
Yeah.
No, I love the
My
idea
apologies.
of smell-o-vision. So machine olfaction, digitised smell, trying to get to the point where a computer can smell. Well, it's not going to smell in the truest sense of the word, but to understand that this smell is different to that smell. Now, it's pretty complicated. Our sense of smell is pretty good because we've got about 400 types of receptor cells. We've only got a small surface area, and one of the reasons that a dog could smell much better than us is because it's got a much larger surface area. So you can have a dog out there sniffing for drugs or sniffing for different things because they've got that larger surface area.
Well, they reckon that Neanderthals had a broader nose than us and probably used smell a lot more than what Cro-Magnon did. Anyway, sorry, I digress.
Well, no, but it probably was needed back in those days. We didn't have refrigerators where we were confident the food wasn't off. So you might have used smell.
Well, you also want to smell that woolly mammoth from a long way away so you could go and hunt it, yeah?
That's right. So a whole range of reasons. So getting all these receptor cells is a challenge. Now, what you can do with machine olfaction is get the stage where you identify molecules in the air. So we could say that molecule, I know that's H2S, rotten egg gas if you like. I know that I don't know what it smells like, but I can identify there's a H2S molecule. So then you can get to the stage where you say to a computer, if you detect H2S, we know what that is. Trying to get the stage where you label and describe all of these different molecules. We smell a wine, or we smell a fire, or we smell something that just smells like bad body odor. We've got all these things in our mind. We go, oh, that's bad body odor. I've got experience with that. I know that. But the molecules that make up bad body odor, a machine gets that. Well, I can identify the molecules, but what does that mean to me? So that's the big challenge at the moment, getting to the stage where you're describing these smells.
It's where the poetry comes in.
That's right, exactly right. Now, we do know also that COVID-19 created some smell blindness, long-term effects of COVID-19. We know some people lost their sense of smell for weeks or permanently, and there is a term for that called anosmia. ANOSMIA.
There you go.
Yeah, so it's so critical to what we do that people that have lost that sense of smell, that's the term. So,
Folks, if you're learning nothing out of this podcast, then I can't believe it. This is amazing.
then you were very clever before you started.
No, you must be very clever before you started, yes.
So that's
Anosmia.
anosmia, yeah. Anosmia sounds good. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Anosmia.
No, that sounds
good.
right to me.
Yeah.
It'll do.
So for people that have got anosmia, then having some other way to detect smells would be quite handy, because it'd be quite annoying not having a sense of smell. I used to hear about surfers sometime when they get dumped in the ocean, they get some of the smell nerves in their nose snapped. Not really any major effect. They come up and go, oh, yep, oh, wow, I got dumped in that. And then they come out from the ocean, they go, I can't smell. And that's it, permanent damage, because it sheared off those nerves. So
Can't smell the hot chips that are waiting for them on the beach.
That's right. How disappointing. How
When
depressing.
someone's brought you hot chips after your surf.
Yep, how depressing would that be? So
Goodness
no
me.
sense of smell. So the idea now is let's create an odour map. Let's get to the stage where these different molecules mean this and put some words around them. And that's where they're really getting to that stage now. What do we use all this for? Well, you could get personalised perfumes and fragrances. So you could say, I like these things. So you could build those together. Insect repellents. I mean, getting to the stage where you've got more control over what's produced, then you can start to do that. So might use for chemical sensors, early disease detection. So diseases smell like things. So you go to a doctor.
Yeah.
The doctor says, sit beside this machine. It'll smell you. Oh, looks like you've got this. We better go and
Well, do you
sort
want to
that
do a
out.
story about a lady who smelt the onset of Parkinson's disease?
There was certainly smells that we've had detected before. We've done some stories around a range of different diseases that can be smelt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and again, one thing we did do a story on was food spoilage. So having food on the shelf, as in, say, meat, for example, and a sticker on there that once it detected certain smells, it would change that sticker and then, okay, don't buy that meat anymore. But you could use it for things like that, having this in your refrigerator, for example, and it says, okay, somewhere in the fridge I can smell the milk is off or the food is off. Now, we're pretty conservative now. You buy the milk, it says, throw this out by the 30th of June, and we probably...
It's like a little switch. Yeah.
Yeah, you throw it out before then. You're not going to... If it's the 1st of July, you don't say, okay... That's all right. I'm sure there's some little safety mechanism built in there, but you could actually have food last longer because you could detect it when it's actually going off rather than, I don't want to take the risk in it, I'll throw it out. So a whole range of things, but I suppose at some stage in the near future, we'll have something built into some type of computer, some type of area of science that'll basically say we're going to be able to detect those smells and describe them.
Well, you open up the fridge and there'll be a little display, or maybe the display's on the outside of the fridge just saying your milk's gone off.
Yeah, that's right. Before you open it up, why not?
Yeah. Five million years of evolution have done a pretty good job in refining the human hand. Having 5 digits with an opposable thumb allows for a strong grip for holding heavy tools and carrying big weights, but it also allows for a really subtle precision grip, ideal for handling very delicate objects and manipulating very fine tools. You could easily be fooled into thinking it was perfect, the result of perhaps an intelligent design. That is, until someone adds an extra bionic thumb onto your hand, and suddenly having 5 digits, well, only 5 digits, that's a handicap. Max, you're not Max.
You think about me with Max Park now. Thank you.
I was just going to say, Matt, give me high 6.
There's a couple of things here. One is the fingernails. The fingernails play an important part in our fingers as well, don't they, for that sensitive touch?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so
the little fingers are actually designed for pressure. You can detect pressure really, really well with your little finger. So for those really fine touches that you've got to use, your little finger's involved there.
Yeah, and if we didn't have fingernails on the back of those, we wouldn't have that same sensitivity. So our fingers have developed, and you're right, we've got a strong grip, we've got a soft touch, but maybe the idea of a 3D printed robotic thumb to add on to our hand would be quite impressive. Now, I'm not sure if you remember that movie called Gattaca,
Yes.
1997, and there was a person in that, and I don't think they were a major character, I can't remember their name, but they had 6 fingers on both hands, genetic engineering and a whole range of things there, and they wrote a piano piece that only a 6-fingered person could play.
Yeah.
So let's take advantage of this genetic modification. Maybe that's what this person was thinking when they were designing this sixth thumb. Hold on, that piano piece from Gattaca, maybe we should write a piano piece for a six-fingered person. The interesting part about this is you strap it on, so you've got an extra thumb on there, and then you use the toes of both feet to move the thumb. So your toe on one foot moves the thumb up and down, the toe on the other foot moves the thumb left to right.
That sounds like it'd be hard to get going, though.
It does, doesn't it? But we know, we've talked before about the malleability of our brain. And it was quite fascinating. They did some research at an exhibition. 596 people, they got to strap on this thumb, aged anywhere from 3 to 96, showed them what you did with your toe, and within a minute, 98% of people able to control this thumb.
Wow.
So they had participants able to move pegs with the thumb. So they'd use the thumb and another one of their digits. The participants could grasp things like foam objects, so they could pick up things. They could basically use this thumb
so cool.
within a minute. Like, I thought that was quite fascinating. But
the thumb's on the opposite. It's on the little finger side of the
correct.
hand.
So
yeah?
it's like an opposite thumb to your normal thumb.
It looks freaky too. I did watch some video of this, and it was amazing to watch too. Just the things you could do with one hand that there's no way you could do with.
Yeah, without having an extra thumb there. Now, I start thinking it might be a bit clumsy as you're walking along and your thumb's going crazy because your big toes are being used while you're walking along. So surely somewhere else better than the big toe, but that's what they did with the first experiment, so that's fine. It was just something to basically use to control that. But when we've done stuff before with Neuralink, having a chip implanted in your brain to control a cursor on a computer, well, how far are we away from a chip in our brain being used to control our second thumb? Like, use your big toe, sure, that was version 1. Now we're at version 7. We just think about using the thumb, just like I hold my hand in front of me now, I think about using my thumb and I can move it, just having that with a robotic extra thumb.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we're there in the next 5 years, 10 years, but at some stage we're probably going to be there. Obviously, for people that have lost a finger, this would be very handy. I'm amazed how many people I see that have lost a finger, and I never know whether to ask them about it or not, but I'm inquisitive, so I do normally ask people, and 99% of people tell me, some people say I don't want to talk about it, and I go, okay, that's fine. But there's always a fascinating story, but the way they've adapted around that loss of a finger is quite incredible. If they could have a replacement finger, I'm pretty sure they'd have a replacement finger in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So if there was some option there. So that's obviously one way that you could do it, but maybe doing extra things with our hands would be quite good. And you've probably watched some of the videos of cracking eggs, playing the guitar, doing all sorts of things.
Yeah, so playing guitar took on a new shape. But just unscrewing the lid off a tub of paint and holding onto the paintbrush at the same time and holding onto the little tub of paint and then going to paint with this fine paintbrush as well it's all in the one motion.
Or with one hand. And forget about losing a finger. Imagine someone that's lost an arm, part of an arm, lost a hand, and then you go, well, I can now do all that with that other hand. There's a friend of mine who's got his arm in a sling and has it that way for as long as I've known him, 30 or 40 years.
Right.
And he's very clever at doing things on his phone, going to the bar and getting a beer and putting things under his arm that doesn't work. So it's actually quite fascinating watching what he does with one good arm and one arm that kind of just hangs there in a sling, but he's learned to do things with it, adapt around that. But again, if you said, hey, have an extra thumb, because using a mobile phone for him, he's got to hold it in one hand and still use that thumb. That'd be an interesting process, having an extra thumb to hold that and then use your other thumb to do things on your phone.
Even unscrewing the lid off a jar is effectively a two-handed job, isn't it?
It is. Definitely right.
Unless you've got an extra thumb.
That's right.
And watching someone do that, like it was just, it was, I don't know, watch the videos, folks. It's fantastic.
I want one now. I'm more thinking about it. Sounds cool.
News images from the Gaza Strip and from the Ukraine highlight the human cost of war as it's written on the faces of the people whose lives are torn apart by incessant shelling. Loss of life is one thing, a terrible thing. But for those who survive, living in cities where you cannot be sure that the buildings that you once depended on still have their structural integrity. Where do you seek shelter? Where can you find security? Thankfully, technology may be able to help out, at least in that small part. Satellite imaging, along with AI, has the potential to identify reliable infrastructure amongst the devastation. Matt, perhaps a peace of mind here for people seeking refuge among the rubble.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things about this one is this is the University College of London has been working on publicly available satellite images from the European Space Agency's Sentinel-1 satellites. So it's things that you can commonly get. And then they've looked at how they can use AI for that, but then they've gone a little bit away from AI and said for some of this damage inspection, AI tools can get quite expensive. There's quite an amount of money that people want to charge to create them, to use them. So they've looked at just some basic algorithms and how have they gone versus AI. They're not quite as good, but they give you a reasonable outcome from the start. So they get basically about 88% accuracy in detecting damage to buildings. Now that's testing they've done over 633,000 buildings across 12 cities in places like Ukraine, Gaza, Syria, etc. So they're looking at a range of areas. So the idea here is to not necessarily go as complicated as AI, but see what we can do. Once we've got that information, then you can start to say exactly as you said, where do we find somewhere for people to get refuge? What do we need to do in terms of repair? What are the priorities? But then I thought there's obviously other ways you can use this as well. When you've got a major storm that goes through, so a natural disaster, and then you need to assess that to say, where do we need to get people? What's the safest place to move people? What roads are damaged so we know how to move people? Having this almost instant analysis to be able to say, okay, we know where the damage is done. You can see where that storm went, or you can see some cracks in the earth from an earthquake perhaps. Right, stay away from that area there, but these areas over here are safe.
Yeah, amazing.
And then I thought a step further, when you do get a major windstorm, for example, and then people say, I've got damage to my house, I need some emergency repairs, and then I need to go through and get an insurance claim put in, get an inspection by an assessor, and then go through and get the building work done that I need to fix it up. Those assessors often could take months to get to your place because they're flat out.
For sure.
Why not use this same sort of technology to say, okay, I can see what's happened there. I can see where this storm went along and the damage it created. So we can analyse that remotely. We're not going to send an assessor out. Our assessors are too busy. But we can say that, yes, get a quote from a builder, $40,000. That seems reasonable looking at the damage that we've got here and the assessment we've done from a remote perspective. If it's in the ballpark, go for it. Get your repairs done. Again, if a quote came in for $500,000 and you looked at that damage and it was a $40,000 repair, okay, we might need to send an assessor out. Why was yours so much dearer? Are you having a lender, etc.? But it's one of those things, I suppose, where we can see all this information. We've got this data there. Some of the stuff that we've got is obviously confidential in terms of some of the satellite imagery we've got, but when you use these Sentinel-1 satellites, it's publicly available. So you can use an algorithm on there to basically assess that. So there's no reason an insurance company couldn't have it, as well as humanitarian companies, a whole range of different organisations. Yeah. So I can see this being used a lot more. Prioritise relief efforts, prioritise where damage control might need to be done, a whole range of things. Or maybe we could also get to the stage where we just stop bombing each other. Maybe that'd be a good idea as well.
Have you ever laid in bed with a sense of dread because you just don't know what to wear that day? Yeah, me too. Seriously though, the beauty of a work uniform is that the first big decision of your day has already been made for you. So for the chronically wardrobe-averse among us, why not flick past the job to an AI stylist? That way you can step out the front door with the confidence that someone or something has taken care of you this morning. Matt, obviously your look today was completely accidental. Have you thought about giving this a go?
It's fascinating. It's no surprise to me whatsoever. There are AI tools available that will give you fashion advice. Style DNA, Stylee, Ayuta, A-I-U-T-A, Ayuta, all can give you style advice about how you should dress. But I read a great article where someone said, I just wanted to say, let's use good old-fashioned ChatGPT. It's a all-rounder. It's not designed to give me style advice like those other ones. And I want to go and just get some generic advice about what I should wear, what sort of wardrobe should I buy for a particular audience, what sort of look I'm after. And so you think of ChatGPT of saying, well, go and look up some historical data or give me some information about something. I must admit, I'm not much into my fashion, but if I was, I wouldn't think about doing this to ChatGPT. But when you do, it's quite fascinating. So some first options when the questions were put to ChatGPT about what you should be wearing, the wardrobe, etc. The first options were pretty generic. And then ChatGPT was said, okay, I want you to pretend you're celebrity stylist Law Roach. I want you to act like Law Roach. And then I want you to dress for someone like, say, Zendaya. So Law Roach is famous for dressing Zendaya. And then suddenly the looks that were given were along that same line. It didn't make you look like Zendaya as a identical image, but just that look, that feel. Suddenly the suggestions were very specific around achieving a certain look.
Well, first of all, I think you in a plunging neckline is probably a big mistake. And watch the height of that split too in your dress.
What about the high heels? How do they go?
Yeah, they go all right, yeah.
Not sure if my ankles are strong enough for high heels. So if you wanted to go out and create a wardrobe, you want to go out and create a certain look, and you wanted certain criteria, here's my budget. I'm conscious of the damage I'm doing to the environment, so I want to make sure I'm getting clothes that were created in a sustainable method. I don't want to use labour that was maybe taken advantage of. You could feed all of these questions that are important to you, if they're important to you, into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will come back with suggestions. So sure, use some of the specific AI tools if you like, use ChatGPT, but this is a thing now. You could actually get your advice about how to dress, not from your wife, who is very quick to tell you how to dress. For kids, not from your parents, who might tell you how to dress before going out. You can go and get some expert advice that will take all this information into account and create some suggestions for your style, for your look. When did we forget how to actually dress ourselves? Apparently we're there now. So it could be a time-saving solution if you're looking for certain looks. But
it could be.
Yeah, look, I think I can probably dress myself these days.
I've had to field conversations first thing in the morning from my wife saying, I can't go into work today because I don't know what to wear.
Well, it's interesting the point you make about
So I
it.
just get ChatGPT is what you're saying.
Exactly what I'm saying. Quietly, secretly, just pull ChatGPT out and say,
what's my wife going to wear to school today? And
you mentioned uniform, though. I remember back when there have been various debates around uniforms around schools, and one of the fun things I do sometimes when I go into schools and I show them how a meeting might run, how a debate at a meeting might run, I'll get them to pick a topic to debate, something that I think is something that there'll be some opinion on both sides. And one of the ones we often do is no uniforms at school. And even back when I was at school, I was like, oh, I hate this uniform. I hate having to get dressed in the same uniform every day. You're all trying to make us look like the same person. And the story back then, of course, was that it was easy to get dressed in the morning. There's a logic around that.
Yeah.
But when you have school kids who do a debate on this, you think, oh, it's obvious where it's going to go. They're going to say, get rid of the uniform. But by the end of the debate, okay, let's have a vote on that now. Everyone I've done, kids have said, keep a uniform.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as much as it sounds like throw away the uniform, the man's controlling us, it's actually quite easy to get up in the morning and put on a uniform, don't have to think about it.
Yeah, and it's also a bit egalitarian as well. Everyone's on the equal status. Look, we won't get too carried away with that. We're talking about ChatGPT.
Yeah, but I think you're right as well.
Have you ever had an online transaction go belly up? I'm still waiting on a set of wine glasses that I ordered from the US to arrive, and they would have been really handy back in 2015 when I placed the order, but I remain hopeful. Well, the Commonwealth Bank and JP Morgan are teaming up to make it a little trickier for scammers to fleece us in dodgy cross-border scams. Matt, how are they going to save people like me from ourselves?
Well, hopefully it doesn't happen to too many people, but it does happen. And I want to go back a bit of history here just to talk about where we're at now. The modern check, if we call it that, which most people probably don't use checks, but the modern check started to take shape in the 17th century. So it's a long time ago. And I can remember I had some young staff one time in one of my businesses and we talked about this check. Someone brought in a check and this young staff member said, what was that? And I showed them the check. Yes, I know that person. I was happy to accept a check. And they're looking at it, they're going, what? You just write down a number.
It's an interesting thing. I promise to pay you.
That's it. It is an IOU.
Amount of money.
Here, I'll give you $1,000 and you
I
can
just wrote on this piece of paper.
You can guarantee I'll give you that
It's as
$1,000
good as money.
because I've written it down and there you go. Now, there's a few steps behind that, but
Yeah.
still, obviously, some people went, fraudulent checks, that's the go, and they made a career, a short career, I must admit, out of that. But so the check goes back to the 17th century. Now, the interesting part about the check is that when I give you a check, you decide which account it goes to, and when you go to put it in that account, it's written out to you, your name on it, and so the bank says, hold on, that says Billy Bloggs, you're not Billy Bloggs, I don't think I should put it into that account. So you're in control, if you like, of where that money goes. So by the 19th century, cheques had become a pretty common method of payment, particularly in England. But again, you decided where it went. Then we got to the stage of credit cards. So the first universal credit card was the Diners Club back in 1950. And not like cheques, the credit card was basically a bank-to-bank transaction. So the bank had control of where that money went. The issue we've got now, and part of the problems we've got, is the fact that we've now got direct bank transfers. So they started in the 1970s. The problem with the bank transfer is that, oh, James, I'll pay you some money. Tell me your BSB, your account number, your bank name, your account name, and I'll put the money into your account. But that gives me two problems. First of all, I could make a mistake. I'm a human. I can type in that number, and there I go. James, I've transferred the money. You had no control over me giving the money to you in your bank account. And then you say, Matt, I didn't receive the money. No, James, I transferred the money. No, Matt, you didn't receive the money, etc., back and forth as long as we like, until I show you my bank account where $50 has gone out of the bank account, and you show me your bank account where $50 has not gone into your bank account.
Yeah.
And then I realise I've typed in the wrong number. I could have made a mistake, or a scammer, and this is a very common scam, does a man-in-the-middle scam. They know I'm going to pay you some money. They know you're going to give me an invoice, so they get in the middle and they issue the invoice with different bank account details. And the problem is, when you do that transfer, at no stage does it check James Eddy is the name that I'm transferring it to. It just checks if the BSB and the account number are legitimate. If those two numbers are okay, transfer the money. Job done.
Yeah.
So if we go back to last year, the CBA launched, Commonwealth Bank of Australia launched a concept called NameCheck. And it seems bleedingly obvious. BSB, account number, and name. Did those three match up? Okay, I got the BSB, got the account number. Hold on, it says it should go to James Eddy. This account is in Billy Bloggs. I don't think that's right. So if something like that happens, if I'm paying the money, I get alerted. Hold on, it looks like the money you're paying is going to an account in the name of Billy Bloggs, not James Eddy. Do you want to continue this transfer? No, that sounds wrong. James, I've got this number. Oh, no, Matt, you reversed the 7 and the 5. It's 75, not 57. Oh, thank goodness that didn't go ahead. Because if it was a legitimate account number in the past, it would have gone ahead.
Yeah.
So NameCheck is fantastic. Now, that's only Commonwealth Bank. They've done a bit of work with Bendigo Bank. They've got a fraud monitoring company called Satori. So that's being piloted right now. But already, NameCheck has prevented more than 10,000 scam payments, saving customers $38 million, and also reduced mistaken payments by $100 million. The mistaken payments aren't so bad because you might be able to get the money back. If $50 turned up at my account and it was wrong, and then someone said, oh, sorry, I gave that money incorrect, I'd say, sure, here's the money back, no problems at all. It's more the scammers who say, sorry, I've got the money now, good luck getting it back. The next step in this process is now they've partnered up with JP Morgan, and this is for international transactions, which probably are more common with scams. And JP Morgan has got a peer-to-peer network called, and I'm going to pronounce it Link, because it's L-I-I-N-K. I don't know, that just looks like
right.
Link to me, but you've got to have some extra I in there. So if we go up at the end and go Link,
Well,
that
what
sounds
other
good
words
enough
we've
to
got a
me.
double I in it? Radii, link. Oh, let's just go with link.
Well, I was thinking, remember there was that advertising guy, Simon Reynolds, and he had a double I in Simon just to make it stand out. I don't know how you used to pronounce Simon, but maybe it was Simon. So anyway, I'm going
With
with
an element of surprise in your voice.
Exactly, that's right. I'm going with Link.
Or question.
Now, what they've got is this same sort of concept where it's NameCheck on an international scale. So basically, you do a cross-border payment. It says, I want to check the name. No, that's not correct. We're not doing the transfer of that money. Again, in the past, transfers been done internationally, and that money's never seen again if it's gone to a scammer. What we really need is every bank to be on board with this, every banking institution, every credit union, everyone that does money transfers to say, we're going to do that extra step, which again seems bleedingly obvious. There's an account name there. Surely you could just check that to make sure that it looks like it's the right account name if it doesn't match up. And it might be a bit obvious if you say, here's my BSB and my account number. I know the company you're paying is ABC Proprietary Limited, but our company name here is XYZ Proprietary Limited. It's okay don't be confused about that. It's all okay. And that might be a bit of a red flag to you going, I'm not sure I should be paying the money to a company that's completely different name to where I'm trying to buy this product from.
Sorry, you might have actually covered this, but if people use their middle initial in a bank account name, but people drop that middle initial, would that cause a problem?
So that would cause a problem. But again, that's where the option is it comes back to you and says, you wanted to transfer money to Billy A. Blogs, and the account you've typed in is Billy Blogs. Yeah. They don't look like they match. So a computer looks at that, they don't match. Then you've got that and go, I know, I'm comfortable, that's the right account, because obviously it's pretty close. If it was Billy A. Blogs and it's now going to John A. Smith, oh, hold on, no, I don't think we should go ahead with that. I'll double check that. And I say to people all the time, and I do it myself, and I get some funny reactions, but I say to people, if it's the first time you're paying a certain person, a certain company, don't rely on the invoice. I know the invoice is there and it's written there, but we've talked about it enough, the man in the middle scam. So pick up the phone and ring. And I've done this. I've rung and said, oh, hi, I've just got to pay that money. Just about to do it. Just checking your account number. It's on the invoice, mate. What are you doing? Stop wasting my time. I know, but trust me, there are scams. Oh, look, I'll have to go and look it up. And they give me the number and I go, okay, that was the same. Thanks very much. Oh, thanks very much. And they kind of get a bit annoyed with you that you've wasted their time. But if I paid the money, it went to the wrong person, then I go...
They'd also be annoyed.
They'd also be annoyed, but it'd probably be my responsibility. Yeah. So I'd rather check. So, yes, if it didn't quite match, it would alert. And then you can take some action about that. But at least I'd prefer that than the other way where it's gone and then go, hold on, that was the wrong account name. What are you doing? Why'd you let that transfer go ahead? Good idea. We just want to see more banks jumping on board.
Throughout the 80s, 90s and 2000s, Aussies watched favourite trusted local industries and brands wind up production and pass into memory over and over and over again. Australia used to make lots of stuff, but production costs are high in the lucky country and manufacturing is cheaper overseas. But Priestley's Gourmet Delights are pushing back in 2024 and serving up sweet success in Brisbane with a new AI-powered manufacturing plant. A positive step forward for Australian industry, Matt.
Well, one of the problems we do have in Australia, of course, is we pay reasonable wages to people.
That's right.
One of the issues you want in manufacturing with lots of people is to pay unreasonably low wages to those people.
And that's why it's cheaper to get done overseas.
Exactly right. So that is a problem for our manufacturing, but we talk about ourselves being a smart country, certainly a lucky country with some of our resources we've got. So is there some way that we can work out ways to use that intelligence, use some of the resources we've got and be better at manufacturing? And so you have got this company, PGD, Priestley's Gourmet Delights in Brisbane. They've just spent $53 million on an AI-powered manufacturing facility. It's a fair-sized facility, 7,740 square metres. And what it does is it uses AI to have autonomous, intelligent processes in place so that the people, the humans there that are still employed, so it didn't get rid of all the humans, they can be used for higher skills. So you need some intelligence. You know you're going to be paying these people more money, so let's take advantage of that rather than having them do something very basic on a production line. So simple things. They've got intelligent vehicles that move around the building, not on set paths, but when you put a product on there, take that over to this other part of the plant and off it goes. You don't have to have a prescribed route for it to go. There are not certain lines painted on the ground. Yeah. You've also got collaborative robots. What a concept. So robots that communicate with each other to stack things better or to move things in a more efficient way. So some of these bits of grunt work, some of the repetitive tasks are taken away from these robots, taken away from the humans, given to the robots. So then the humans can say, how can we get better at coming up with different recipes? Or the taste testing, let's see what we can make in terms of the changes there. There's no machine olfaction in this particular example. You've still got humans being used. So let's use the people to do the clever things they need to do, recipes, the tasting, ingredient selection, even the decoration, doing hand decoration, customised hand decoration on some of these products that they produce, and let the computers and the robots do all the grunt works. They do produce a lot. 14,281 cartons of cake are delivered weekly. They've got 18,000 outlets across Australia. So they're high levels of production. But here's the interesting part. This new facility created 21 extra jobs. As soon as you hear about automation, AI or autonomous
People
robots.
start shaking their fists and saying, what about the humans? What about the humans?
That's right. Well, in this case, 21 new jobs, and those 21 new jobs basically allow you to do some of those cleverer things. The whole concept here is that AI can free the humans from doing the simple things and let them do the more complex things for the moment. Is this saying that at some point in the future we'll get to the stage where they take over everything? That's the scary part. But at the moment, I suppose it's embracing AI, embracing the technology, rather than saying, like a Luddite used to do, a Luddite used to come in and destroy the clothes weaving apparatus and say, that's it, that'll protect our jobs. Well, it doesn't really. They'll just build it again. Yeah. Let's see how humans can be used for all of our cleverness.
Well, anything that brings production back to our shores, I think, is a good thing, surely.
That's spot on.
About transport costs, we often produce the raw materials and then ship it overseas, only to be sent back to us to be sold at a higher price.
For us to buy the same product back that was mined here in Australia, for example.
Yeah. We joke about it quite a bit here at Tech Talk. All that Terminator 2 and Skynet business, they're all references that when we discuss AI and robotics. But the rise of autonomous weaponry is real. Matt, stay alert or be alarmed?
Somewhere in between, maybe.
Somewhere
I'm not sure.
Between.
Civilian deaths caused by armed drones are escalating in war-torn countries. We've done stories on them before. Loitering munitions or one-way attack drones are being increasingly deployed, and why not?
But they tend not to be AI. They're still controlled by humans, but remotely.
Well, you've got a few things happening here. The level of human control is diminishing, so you still have humans in control-ish at the moment, but you do get killer robots that can select and engage targets without human input. Now, when I say without human input, there's obviously programming that says, look for these specific things and then you can go and engage. So mostly these drones are being flown by humans. Mostly they're in control or humans are in control, but the technology is there to let them go further. And one of the things that we talk about, where we're at now is kind of like this Oppenheimer moment, that whole moment where scientists are developing this incredible technology for the development of technology's sake, but then some of those scientists don't feel that comfortable when it gets to the point where it can be used to kill or win wars. And of course, Oppenheimer quoted from the Gita back in 1940s when the nuclear bomb was being developed, and he said, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." And that's what he felt like. It was developing this incredible technology, but then used to go and kill people with a nuclear weapon. And so are we at that point now where we're developing this technology that's going to be used to kill people more effectively? Where are we at with the laws around this? What's the international law system going to be around this? Are we just saying develop technology because we can and it gets used by however it's used by governments across the world?
That's right. It just feels like this tide is rolling in and good luck stopping it.
How do we protect humanity from autonomous weapons? What lethal autonomous weapon systems are going to be developed in the future? In fact, the UN General Assembly is going to discuss exactly that at an upcoming session. And it would be fascinating to be there at that discussion, because people will say, did you stop us developing guns? Did you stop us developing machine guns? Did you stop us developing planes that were going to be used throughout history? Wars have sometimes been an accelerator of technology.
Well, there've been agreements on using chemical weapons and biological weapons.
Yeah, that's right.
And conspiracy theorists will debate the use of those. But I don't know.
And Australia's played a role in some of those international treaties in the past about banning landmines, banning biological chemical weapons, banning cluster munitions. So we've played a part there. We aren't as clear at the moment around drone technology. So I love drones. I love the fascination with them. We see them being used to round up cattle that we've talked about before. What a wonderful use of a drone. But it's not much different from rounding up cattle to arming those drones and rounding up people. So it's a bit scary. Don't know what the answer is. It's there for discussion. Give us your thoughts.
And start digging your doomsday vault. All right, here's a bit of a softer topic to get people debating in the lunchroom at work. Now, AI isn't just artificial now, it's integral or integral. I don't know, you say tomato, I say tomato. Hang on. You say tomato, I say... Well, it's here. AI's here and using it is commonplace. And it's happened very quickly. But perhaps the question really is, are we putting it to its optimal use, Matt?
And this is where Megan Smith, the former US Chief Technology Officer, has had a little bit to say. And she heads an organisation called Shift 7. And that's really trying to bridge the gap between tech talent and underfunded sectors. So Megan's basically saying we should be adopting AI in everything we possibly do. People are steering away from AI a little bit, a bit scared, a bit concerned, so they're choosing not to use it. But maybe we're missing opportunities. We talk about doomsday, we talk about using AI in things where they could be used for bad, but let's take advantage of where AI could be used for good. Not a lot of AI integration at the moment in things like not-for-profits, maybe in things like healthcare. Can we get better at using AI in some of these areas? Can we get better with proactive decision-making in government? I joked, my April Fool Day joke this year was that we were going to have an additional councillor in local government, and that additional councillor was an AI-dedicated councillor. That AI councillor would only look at data, information, facts, and make decisions without any emotion built into that decision-making process. What a wonderful thing to have in a decision-making process. As you can imagine, people weren't that excited by the idea of an AI counsellor or an AI parliamentarian, for example, trying to make decisions for society. So this whole discussion from what Megan's leading there is, let's see how we can prioritise AI's positive applications and mitigate potential harm through basically using AI in a positive way. Can we do that? Can we separate that? Can we say, let's take the good of AI and not have the bad from AI? It's hard to separate, but if we do try and block it off, I think the thing is that the bad will develop and the good won't happen. So maybe we could use AI more in diagnosing diseases, personalising treatment plans, discovering new drugs to help us out. The estimation from the World Economic Forum is that that AI in general could contribute $15.7 trillion to the global economy by 2030.
Wow.
So that's a lot. So let's embrace it, and then we can be nice to our future overlords.
Well, yeah. But it's important to just at least, not be too afraid of it. I think, and for me, I can sympathise because it is a bit of an intimidating thing. It's a change in the world order when we start leaning into AI.
Every change we've had throughout
That's right.
centuries has been a bit scary, and there are some people, we've got the innovation, or the diffusion of innovation graph where we talk about the early adopters and it goes all back to the Luddites at the very end. And on that graph, there's people at the very bleeding edge. They're leading the way, but there's not the majority of those people. That's a very small percentage, and I can't remember the percentage off the top of my head. But essentially, you've got any change is largely resisted until it becomes commonplace. So it's hard to change. It's hard to get people to change, hard to get people to think about change.
Yeah, it certainly is. Well, that's all we have time for today, folks. I've got to get back to digging the extension into my bunker. And, Matt, you've got all that canned food to stow away.
Well, no, I'm working on my cube.
Oh, you're going to be working on your cube. But what about all that canned food?
Not worry about the canned food. I'm just going to match Max Park at least. I'm not going to try and beat a robot, but Max Park, I'm gunning for you.
0.3 of a second maybe, beat the robot. Well, thanks for another cracking tech talk, Matt. My wife insists that a man cave as an extension to a bunker is an unnecessary extravagance, but I say, where else am I going to put my pool table and all that Harley-Davidson memorabilia? That's why it's got to be the biggest room. Thanks for tuning in again, folks. Contrary to suggestions in the context of this podcast, Tech Talk with Matthew Dickinson is not a subsidiary of a doomsday cult in any form. And further to that, neither of us carry concealed arms or own any more than 5 cans of any form of tinned food at any one time. I'm James Eddy, wishing you happiness and productivity over the next 7 days, and we look forward to catching you again in another week's time when we can land another episode of Tech Talk for your enjoyment. See you then.